means something to do with the eye or vision. We're studying history, so we're going to use the acronym OPTIC to talk about things that we're looking at. OPTIC. That stands for Overview, Parts, Title, Interrelationships, and conclusion. Follow these steps and you can take nearly anything that you're looking at, anything that you're studying visually, and break it down into a greater meaning. You're trying to get an idea of what the visual was trying to portray and even evaluate how effective it was at making that message understood. You can use the OPTIC method with just about anything that you're able to visually look at. The more features that thing has, the more information you're going to get out of it. But you could use a sculpture, you could use a photograph, you could use a painting, you could use a tool, an artifact, something that came from the past that you are studying. For today's example, I'm going to use this book I have of Currier and Ives prints. Now, Currier and Ives was a company that created prints of pictures that were painted and engravings, artwork that was sold during the 1800s, ended up in a lot of homes. These prints were really affordable, which really made it a breakthrough for the average American to have some type of art in their home. In fact, you could purchase one of these for 6 cents and you would hang it up in your dining room. It was somewhere between the era of having paintings actually painted and having photographs readily available. So we weren't quite to the age where everybody could have photographs, but you could have paintings printed and get them pretty affordably. I'm going to go through this book and I'm going to show you a few examples here, and we're going to examine different parts. We're going to use them as an idea of what to look for while you're examining a piece of art. So the first one we're looking at is Winter in the Country, with a subtitle of Getting Ice. You start with step 1, which is overview. What is this about? What is this whole thing about? And you can tell that it is going to be winter in the country. You've got that clue because that's the title of it. A subtitle saying Getting Ice. Right there, that already tells you something about it. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Getting the title is step 3. When you're doing step 1, when you're doing the overview, you're going to describe it with just enough detail that someone who can't see it is going to understand what the main idea of it is. So we look at this picture and we say, okay, they're outside, they're in the country, there are people gathering white blocks into a wagon, and maybe that's it. Maybe that's the end of it. You're not getting into too much detail. You're just trying to summarize what the main idea of this picture is. Are there other things going on in here? Yes. But you got the main idea. You got it outside. Maybe you even throw in that it looks like it's snowy, so it's winter, okay? But don't get into too much detail because we're just doing the overview. That's step 1. Step 2, describing the parts. Okay, now you start moving around the picture and you want to divide the image into 4 different parts. Divide it up, like say I've got my frame. You're going to divide the image that you're looking at into 4 parts. They don't have to be equal sized parts. They could even be cut at different angles, whatever is fine. But you want to break it up. That helps you narrow down that you're not always focusing on just one corner of it, because there are corners that are going to give you details that you weren't expecting. All right, so if we look at one corner, we can see some type of shed, a building, a structure. You could say it's made out of wood. Tells you something about it. Tells you if it's fancy. It doesn't have windows, okay? And these are things to notice, what it does have and what it doesn't have. Some of this you're bringing in your background knowledge. If you look at this and you say, oh, I know that's definitely an apartment, or you've been in apartments and you're like, that's definitely not an apartment house, you can identify it that way. Otherwise, you can just describe it based on what you do know about it. On the other side, you can see somebody who looks like they're holding some type of tool over their head. Again, you might be ready to interpret that as some type of axe, or maybe from your experience, you're thinking that's some type of hammer. You're starting to put things together. You see that there's blocks in the wagon. Those are blocks of something. What are they doing? Are they chopping something up? Okay, now your brain starts turning, bringing things together. Okay, how are these pieces related? As you look at the parts, you're building up what makes up the whole. You're going to identify all the things that you can see in those sections of the picture. Identify colors and textures and animals and plants and people, shapes, symbols. If you see tools, if you see building materials of various types, describe what you see. Step 3 3 is describe the title and the creator. The title in this case is very helpful in us identifying what this is about. It says Winter in the Country with the subtitle of Getting Ice. Now in very small print I can see that it says painted by C.H. Derrick. I think that's the name. It's really hard to read. But I know that it was published by Currier and Ives. And Currier and Ives, even though they weren't the actual painter of this, they were the publisher that was famous for just publishing these prints. So if you can't find the actual name of the artist, you can associate it with who was in charge of building it. And if you know some background information on who that is, or if you knew that it was a company, that would be valuable information to add into your understanding of this piece. Step 4 is interrelationships. Interrelationships. Look at how different things in the picture are related to each other. So you've got some men holding tools over a hole in the surface, and other people with a wagon full of these white blocks. You start to draw some conclusions, and you're starting to say, okay, well, maybe those are the chunks of ice that they have broken out of a lake, and you're explaining what you see. You might be wrong, and that's okay. Part of historical interpretation is trying to draw conclusions, and I give you permission to make the wrong conclusions as you practice this process. How are they carrying these blocks of ice away? Well, they have a horse tied to this cart, okay? So I'm seeing a relationship between the animal and the cart. If you look in the foreground, you can see some smudges in the white, which would suggest where there was something traveling. Maybe this is where the cart actually leaves the frozen over lake and carried away. Maybe that's the path that they take. If you look in the distance, you can see some people that are standing on the lake on one leg. Now, you ask yourself, are those people working on getting ice out of that lake? Or are they having fun ice skating? Step 5 is the conclusion. The conclusion, you're bringing it all together. You've already identified a relationship between this part and this part, a relationship between this part and this part, a relationship between this part and this part. Now you're bringing it all together. What is this whole thing about? What is a bigger message? Now you know what the title is. You've already given what the overview is. What is happening here? One example of the conclusion could be that this picture shows how people needed ice to cool things down, and they were getting that from the local lake, and they had to get it out by using axes and a wagon and a horse. Now in fine print on this, I can see that the date of this image was 1864, which tells me that it is probably portraying life in 1864. In 1864, we didn't have refrigerators. We had to use ice. And maybe you didn't know that, but that's why when we do an optic, we're bringing in information that we already know or already think that we know in order to inform our analysis of a piece of art. All right, let's look at a couple of other ones. Here we have preparing for market. Preparing for market, I can see a lot more going on in this picture. It's a very, very busy scene. You can see somebody on the right-hand side is holding an axe in the air. Again, we're looking at a tool being held, showing somebody working. You're going to interpret, what are they doing? Are they trying to chop wood? Are they trying to break up ice? You can see a wheel hanging in this tiny little building on the right-hand side, and your past experience might tell you that that is a well for drawing up water. But if you don't have that past experience and you don't know, you can just describe it. There's a wheel hanging from a rope inside a building. There's a couple of different horses here, one of which is not tied to anything and one of which is tied to a wagon. You can see people holding baskets. The name of the work is called Preparing for Market. Looking at relationships, we see a woman on the ground and a man in the cart. You see a child on the doorstep. Ask yourself, do you think they are related? Do they have some type of relationship between them? It looks like the woman and the man are helping each other with whatever they're trying to do. It's like probably loading things into the cart. The child doesn't look like anybody is attending to it, but the child is definitely interested in what the man and the woman are doing. You can look at the type of things that they are loading into the cart. Are they loading tools? Are they loading rocks? Are they loading vegetables? Maybe you can identify what type of vegetables, or you can say that they're all categories of fruit, or they're all categories of squash. In some ways, paintings like these gives us a good idea of what people ate during this time period. You can see different types of birds in the foreground. There's a turkey and a duck and a chicken. I think these people must be eating turkey, duck, and chicken sometimes. All right, last one I'm going to show for you is this one picture of comparing the single life and the married life. We have a picture of a man who's single. Look at his posture. Does his posture show that he is stressed out and worried, or does it show that he is relaxed and reclined? This is your interpretation. You get to make the call. overall, what do you think? What do you think it shows about him? Then for the married picture, does he look happy? Does he look sad? Look at the relationship of where the people in the picture are. You see that the woman and the man are closer together than the woman and the man are close to the child. The child is a little bit off removed. That tells you something about their relationships. Does it definitely make an absolute statement like true for all relationships? No, but it lends an idea. Look at the types of clothing that they're wearing. In both of these pictures, I'm not sure if I think that these are people that would be loading a wagon for market. I'm not sure that any of these people would be hacking up ice cubes out of a river. You can draw interpretations on how much money they have, what they do for a living, what do they do for fun. Your exercise in using optics to analyze pictures and artifacts should be a fun one. It should be a little bit of a detective hunt, trying to learn as much as you can from a picture. Once you start looking, you'll see things that you didn't see before. Have fun, guys.